Hi everyone and welcome back to another video with me, Shruti. You're watching Living Our Ascension. This is basically going to be a series of videos that I do on astrology. And, because what happens is that, astrology is one of the tools that I used along my process of ascension and enlightenment, to really come into myself. And as you might know, one of the most important things about ascension is know thyself, is coming into a knowing of what you are at a soul level. And astrology was one of those things that really helped me. And certain aspects of astrology more than others, because you could really get into astrology into lots of details, but there's certain aspects of it that I wanted to speak about that are more important than others perhaps for the ascension path. And one of these things is the placement of the north node of the moon. And I really wanted to make this video especially for those of you who are perhaps haven't delved into astrology yet, or you don't know, you're beginners. And that's fine, because I'll be showing you how you can calculate it yourself. It's actually not like a calculation. You just have to see what sign it's in, what house it's in, and then you just need to listen to my explanation for it and see if it gives you some tips. Because I remember that, the position of the North Node, it shows us what our destiny is in this life, but it also shows us, those areas of our life where we fall the most, perhaps which are the most challenging for us, areas that are quite unknown. It can often show us where we have addictions, the challenges that we have, and those are actually the areas that we are really obsessed with. And that's why when we don't get it in the moment, we sort of cling to the lower aspect of that energy, and we that's where the addictions come in. And but once we know what the higher aspect of that same energy is, then we can use it in a more productive way, and that actually becomes our destiny. The North Node is the North Node, so basically, is not a planet, like you have the sun in a certain sign, you have the moon in a certain sign. These are all physical planets. But the North and South nodes, they represent these points. They're just points in the sky. And you can say that that's where a certain high level of energy comes in. So it's kind of like, the energy is higher than what the planets represent. So even though they're not physical, they actually represent the point of, if you look at a person's life and you see that they went through the process of enlightenment within themselves, and you see how they did that, like what events caused that more specifically, and what realizations then led them to do that, like what were the main themes. One way that you can see that is through astrology. And so the position of the North and South nodes can really show us that. So I hope that it is with that end that I'm making this, that I hope that this can help you. So if you're subscribed to this channel and you see 12 different videos, because there's 12 positions in astrology depending on what sign it's in, then that's the reason why that I'm putting out so many. And I don't plan to put out lots of different astrology videos, so don't worry about it. It's it's not going to be an every day or every week thing. If you see lots of videos uploaded at once, that's the reason why. Or there might be one after the other, I'm not sure yet. So if you're watching this and this is not your sign, just wait for your sign to come. And so what I'm going to do is, first I'm just going to give you a little bit more of the introduction, and especially you need to check which house and sign it's in, so that you can then find that video on my channel related to that house and sign and listen to those two videos. So what you need to do is, if you don't know, if you already follow astrology and you already know, you follow a certain house system, because in astrology there's different systems, house systems, which can, and depending on which system you use, the sign, not the sign, but the house position most likely of your South and North node can be different. So if you already use astrology, then you can use whatever house system you use. That's fine. You can listen to my interpretation for it. But if you don't, then I follow the whole house system, and I really like this system. And it's also the simplest to understand as well, so it's quite easy. I will explain it in just a second. It's not hard, so don't worry about it. So what you need to do is click the link below this video. When you check the description below this video, you'll see a link to a website where you can go and you can enter your birth information, and it'll generate your astrology chart. And on that astrology chart, then you can check your North Node, where it is. And so the information that you need before you go to this website is your birth date, the place and the place of birth, as well as the exact time of birth. So if you don't know your time of birth within like 10-15 minutes, if it's not accurate, then only check the sign of your North Node, because the sign should remain the same, no matter, as long as you have the day right, the birth day. But the time, changes the house that it's placed in, like where on the wheel it is. If you don't know your birth time, then just listen to the video for the sign. So for example, my North Node is in the sign of Taurus, and it's in the 11th house. But if I don't know my time of birth, I will just look at North Node or Rahu in Taurus, and I won't really check because I don't know which house it's in, because I don't know my time of birth. But if you know that your time of birth, which should be most of you, and this needs to be accurate, so check it from like a birth certificate or another kind of official document. If you know your birth time, then enter that information, and you'll know which house it's in as well. And then listen to 2 videos then. So first listen to the house video, and then listen to the sign video. And I've drawn a chart here that I can show you an example. When you go on that link and you enter the information, one of the charts on that page will be a circular one like this. So check the circular chart and look for this RA. This is Rahu, or it's also called the North Node. In Vedic or Indian astrology, it's known as Rahu. The North Node is known as Rahu. And the opposite is Ketu. Ketu is the South Node. And South Node shows what our past has been like, what our default patterns are. And Rahu shows what we are coming into, what our destiny in this life is, what purpose we are here to fulfill. So now, as you can see, we're going to focus a little bit more on the North Node, because that is what we need to fulfill, and the South Node is basically what we're leaving behind. So you'll see me mention this much more, but this whole axis is important. So the Rahu or the North Node, for my chart, is in the sign of Taurus and is in the 11th house. And how do you know this is the 11th house? Is because the first house is always this one. If you look on the chart, on the western side, it'll be over here on the western side. This is the first house always on a circular chart. So mine is Cancer. So this is 1. You always count the first house first. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then you get to 11. So this is the 11th house. So my North Node is in the 11th house. And like I said, it's in the sign of Taurus. So here I've written down, so write down these 2 things, that North Node or Rahu is in the 11th house. So this is the video I'll see first, North Node or Rahu in 11th house. The video I'll watch second is North Node or Rahu in the sign of Taurus. So these are the 2 videos now that I need to watch. So once you go on this website and you have this figured out, you write these 2 things so that you don't get confused, then you can watch these 2 videos. And if you have any questions, if you're watching this video, you have any questions, you're confused, let me know in the comments below, and I'll try and help you out if I can. And now let's begin, with a little bit of explanation of what the North and South Nodes are, and then I will, proceed to the position. So the South Node in astrology is known as, our past. If you believe in past lives, it shows us what kind of a past life we had, what we were in our past life. If you don't believe in past lives, then it's something that the past that we have had in this life, our childhood when we were growing up, let's say like the first 20-30 years of our life. And the North Node then shows us what is our actual destiny in this life. And the South Node, representing our past, shows us what we're good at. It's something that we are quite good at already, that we have established ourselves in. Imagine like if it's like a past life, we've actually done that already. It's something that we have are quite mature in, but that doesn't mean that we have fully mastered it. And then how do we master it though? It can be an area in life, the South Node, where we are a little bit dissatisfied. And how do we make that complete? How do we become satisfied in it and become fully complete in that life, in that area of life, is if we develop where our North Node is placed. So we are, lots of astrologers say that you need to let go of the position of where the South Node is, like whatever the South Node represents in your life, let go of that area and only focus on the North. It's not really exactly like that, but the thing is that wherever your South Node is sitting, you just need to it's something that comes easily to you, that you can fall back upon, but there isn't as much of an dedicated effort needed in that area of life, because if you overdo that, then it becomes stagnant. So how it will expand is when you go towards what the North Node represents, and then not only will that area, unknown area of the North Node of your destiny flourish, but also this area that you are good at but have not fully mastered, this also becomes mastered. So the two opposite ends come together, and that's when transcendence happens, because that is how we transcend duality. So all of us in our heads, in the beginning, we have why we haven't become enlightened yet is because there is some part of us that considers something as good or bad, weighs this one as better than the other, and the other is not something we have fully gone into, we haven't fully embraced. So when we actually go in this direction of the North Node, we fully embrace it in a grounded way, in a way that's not ungrounded, or trying to do it in a quick way, in a superficial way, but we actually delve into it there. And this is something that, where the South Node is, we're quite developed in it. When the two of them come together, then both of them grow. It becomes that yin yang, that balance, and that means that through that area of life and the struggles that we've had within it, and then the realizations, we transcend. So when we truly do that, that's when the enlightenment process happens. And if you check the charts of people who perhaps have reached a certain level in their enlightenment, you can see that, the events that happened in their life that caused that, both the problems and the transcendence, a big part of it is related to this axis. So this is the axis, according to me. I've never read this, but according to me, this is how we transcend duality. So that's our life purpose in this life. You might have a certain job, like let's say you're a teacher, or let's say you're a doctor, because the sign of Virgo is a doctor. Let's say your sun is in Virgo, or you are a doctor, but that doesn't mean necessarily that you came into this life to become a doctor. It's just your job, it's what you do. Let's say your North Node is in another sign that represents being a pioneer or something, then your main purpose was to become a pioneer, to do something in a new way, to really develop that, to forge new paths. And because your sun is in Virgo, you do that as a doctor. You could have easily done that. If your sun was somewhere else, you could have easily done that being a pioneer, being a teacher, being, a homemaker, whatever it might be. But the main purpose for which you incarnated in this life was not to be a doctor, it's to be a pioneer, to do things in a different way. It's just an example. So it shows us, the position of our North Node shows us what is our destiny in this life. It's always an area that is the most darkest in our horoscope, that we don't know. That's the unknown region. It represents our unknown. The South Node, our past, represents the comfort zone, the default patterns that we keep going back to. And then what happens, like when we keep doing something that we have done, it becomes boring, it becomes redundant, there's some stagnation there. And the only way that it can expand is if we open up new areas of life, and then we bring those skills, then they merge with something we already know. So that's what the North Node represents. And where we have the North Node, it's actually this really high vibrational energy, and we will be doing things in a very different way, in a more eccentric way. And we can be quite eccentric with it, which I'll explain through every sign that when we do that. But what the North Node represents, is also something that when we first go into the unknown, like when we go into the darkness, the dark forest, we're going to fall down a few times. We can't see anything. We're not familiar with that space. But it's something that, really draws us in. It's the mystery. It's the most mysterious thing, and it's like we can be obsessed with it, with that area of life, and we really want it. We desire it, But when we go into it, we can first latch on to the more superficial things that it represents, and those become the main obsessions in our life, the main personality, defects, quote unquote, even though there's no as such defects. But those become the most problematic areas in our life often. But when we learn to see what the higher aspect of that same energy is, and we put our efforts there and we keep going it, because in the beginning, when we try and do it the right way, something, instead of grabbing onto this more superficial aspect of it, when we go deeper into the unknown, into the darkness, we will fall quite a few times. So it's really important for us to be on that path, to keep at that path. And the North Node is said to mature around the age of 42 or 45, and that's when we truly learn, after falling down quite a few times, the lessons of what it represents. But if you are on the path of enlightenment, of ascension, this can happen much before. You don't have to wait for that default time of 42 and 45. Perhaps things will become more grounded at that time, but you can really accelerate your journey as well. So I don't want to keep speaking about this and make this too long, but that is what the North Node represents. And when you combine this North and South Node axis, this becomes transcendence. And I'll be speaking about, depending on your placement, what that axis is for you and what you need to unify, and the negative experiences that can happen, as well as how you can transcend them, and what the positive side of that is. And in the comments below, please let me know if you resonate with this, what particular challenges you've gone through. Let us all know. And finally, I also want to say that I have astrology readings on my website as well, so please check them out. They are relationship readings, because relationships are another aspect of life through which we find out what we are as a soul, because all the relationships that we meet in our life, they reflect our own soul. So it's the beloved path, and there's lots of people out there who are looking for their soulmate, their twin flame, and that's what this reading is all about. It shows you what kind of partners come into your life, at a physical level as well, what their qualities are, but also at a higher level, what that union, that marriage looks like, and it shows you what that union with yourself looks like, so it brings insights into that. They're very interesting codes. So that's one of the readings I have. It's called Soulmate Astrology Codes reading. And then the other reading I have compares two charts. So for example, your own chart, and if you have a partner. So if you're single, you can go for the first one. It'll bring you insights into your default patterns as well. What holds you back from fulfilling relationships, what your default patterns might be, anything in the way. Because when we come into that conscious awareness of it, then things start to change, and then we draw partners that represent that higher energy instead, for more fulfilling relationships. And the other reading that I have compares two different charts. So for example, you and your partner, you give me their birth information as well as yours, and I compare them and speak about the dynamic of this relationship, when the two energies come together, what the clashes are, what the problems can be, and how you can transcend them, as well as what the higher union looks like because the highest union that we can have on this planet is of service. You are here to serve at the end of the day. You are a creator being, so you are here to create something. You are here to serve yourself and all of creation. And when two people come together, they can build something that is even greater than what they can do individually to create, to serve. And there's charts that are not just the main astrology chart. There's these divisional charts in astrology as well, and all of them can things like that can show what that purpose is, what our higher purpose is. So when we know that, we come into it it ourselves first, and then we draw partners that represent it, and so it becomes that actual soulmate union, and not just, you know, any random physical partners that we might have that only fulfill us at a socio economic level, but also at the higher level. Anyway, so those are the readings I have on my website. Please check them out in the astrology services section of www.livingourascension.com. You can find the link below this video. And now let's move on to the sign position. So what happens if you have your North Node or Rahu in the sign of Taurus or in the second house? And if you have this position, then, you know, the South Node will be in the opposite sign or the house. And we're going to begin with that explanation because it explains what your past is or what your default pattern is. And we'll begin with that, and then we'll go into the North Node. And so this means that your South Node is either in the sign of Scorpio or, you know, in the 8th house. The South Node is also called Ketu in Indian astrology. And this means that, you know, if you have this position, then you're a person who is someone who is very emotionally empowered, you know, most of the time. To a large degree you are, but it doesn't mean that this energy has fully been mastered. And how it will become mastered in this life is when you equally balance it with the opposite thing, which is where your North Node is, and that is material security. So in this life, you know, in your past, for example, you might be somebody who is, you know, very good at intimacy with yourself and with others as well. And what this means is this leads to somebody who you know, becomes very emotionally stable, and often this can be through a lot of crisis that happened in your life as well, you know, like a lot of turbulent changes, big sudden crisis, sometimes even danger, abusive situations even. This is not really an easy position, you know, but it's one of the most transformative. And that is the word for you also. Transformation is what you are very good at. You're very comfortable with it, or, you know, you learn to be. Also because you are good with intimacy as well, you know, and with this emotional wealth that you have, you are also, you may also have this access to other people's resources, and this became a part of your early part of life, you know, somehow the resources of other people, like family resources or of a spouse, or even, you know, other people. Sometimes we have a business through which we get other people's resources, like if you have clients and stuff, but somehow that came to you quite easily, you know, because of your vulnerability, your openness to vulnerability, and this emotional empowerment that you have. And you're the kind of person who can rely on themselves emotionally, you know, like you know that no matter what happens in life, there's a sense, there can be this sense with these people that no matter what happens in my life, no matter what kind of changes I go through, like tomorrow if I lose this house, or you know, something turbulent happens, or a relationship ends, I'm going to be fine, because of the reason that, you know, I can handle the emotional changes, like I can handle all of those fears, those traumas and everything, because I've been through that in my past, and I survived, you know. I kind of learned to rely on myself emotionally. So that is something that you have. But what happens is, with this position, there can sometimes be too much of a falling into that, you know, as your default pattern, and you can kind of rely too much on that. And everything in life doesn't run by just emotional empowerment, you know. We also have to appreciate the material aspects of life. It's not only just about, you know, the spiritual or the emotional, and mastering like yourself and others psychologically, and being able to control everything with that, you know, because you are so good at that. You can even control others sometimes, you know, through that, and get the things that you need from there, because of your emotional and psychological penetrative abilities. You know, this position can be somebody who's also very sexually magnetic, because the sign of Scorpio, or the 8th house, is related to intimacy and sexuality. So you have this, and you know how to use it also, you know, this empowerment, this emotional empowerment. But something that you are more vulnerable in is material stability. and life will throw you, in situations where you will find that you have to become materially independent as well. Just like you are emotionally independent, you are the person who can come to themselves for anything, any emotional needs, and perhaps, most likely other people also come to you for that. But in this life, you might be becoming the person who is materially like that, materially resourceful for yourself and others. But in the beginning, this can be quite hard, and actually I have this position as well. My North Node is in the sign of Taurus. And when we have this position, in the beginning, it's kind of like, we sometimes don't know how to handle resources very well. Like, there can be this chaotic energy when it comes to resources, and the deeper side of that is that you don't know exactly what your self-worth is, what that looks like, because the sign of Taurus has to do with worth. And how you can manage this energy is by appreciating the value of material things, that they also have a value. And yes, you are very good at appreciating the fact that everything leaves, that there's this death and rebirth that is a part of life, and material things will ultimately go away. They don't mean much in that sense. Nothing is stable forever, and you're very comfortable with that. But that doesn't mean that, we are on this planet, in a physical body. So we are here to enjoy the physical, whether that is our body, whether that is, the foods that we eat, anything that we can enjoy with our senses, is what Taurus is about. And, it also rules money as well, and material stability. So, often people with this position, they don't know, they're not very stable with this energy somehow. There's this obsession with it. They want this, material security, and there can be obsessions with it in different ways that can play out in more negative ways as well. So either it can be somebody who's obsessed with making money, and they just grasp onto the first way of making it quickly, get rich quick kind of a scheme. Or it can be, because Taurus also rules food, so it can be somebody, when you're emotionally unstable, you just eat and eat, and you just want more and more and more of that. And that, somehow it's something that manifests in my life. That is one of my most challenging sides that was hard for me to master, and still can be. But it's about why a person does that is because they don't understand the value of one thing, the one thing that they have. And this is what, if you have this position, what you need to learn is that whatever that material thing is in front of you, what is it worth? What is its value? So learn to appreciate that and just sit with it. So for example, if you're thrown into a situation where you don't have much, let's say materially, you don't have many. So I'll give you my own example because that'll make it clearer. So for example, a couple of years ago, I began this job that I do now. And in the beginning, perhaps I didn't have, because I wanted to do a spiritual job now, So I am all about spirituality. I'm very empowered in it, with the emotional side of it. And like I explained, a very scorpionic person, very in touch with what's going on, very emotionally stable, and things like that, empowered. But, and this is then what I wanted to do, as a career as well. But the thing is that when you don't have the other side also equally developed, when you don't appreciate the physical things of life as much, then you don't fully understand their value. So for example, I had to appreciate the fact that even when I don't have lots of money, like I don't have a normal regular kind of job anymore, but there's all of these small resources that I have. Like I wanted to start making videos, and I would maybe in the beginning complain about the fact that my camera is not very good, or there's some problems with it. But if you have this position, you might have sort of tantrums like that sometimes. But you have to appreciate the fact that whatever you do have in front of you, like even if you don't have a fancy camera, you know, maybe you have a phone and the phone has a camera, just begin with that. Take that one thing and utilize it to its highest possibility, to its highest material possibility that it can serve you, that it's you know, utilize its full value, appreciate its full value of what you have. And that is the first step. And when you fully indulge in that, that is when the next one opens up, and you know, other resources will come to you. So you can feel like you don't have resources, you know, with this placement. Like resources have a chaotic way of coming. Suddenly there'll be so much that comes to you, and other times there'll be nothing. That's how it can feel. And that's because within ourselves, like, we haven't learned to master the value of physical things, you know, what that means, and to utilize it to its fullest ability. So in my case also, then I was thrown into, you know, sort of appreciating this sensual side of life, you know, that whatever I do have, like even I started, you know, appreciating perfumes and smells and natural ones. Then I started working with essential oils and creating my own creams and, you know, these small perfumes and stuff like that. And then I was selling it on my shop as well, you know, for other people to buy. So you see, it's kind of like, but I never had those skills, you know, how to, like, I'm not trained in like being in like perfumes or things like that. But it's just this keen sense, because wherever you have the North Node, you know, it's the unknown zone for you. But at the same time, there is this inner talent that's there. It's like this inner genius. And when you do step into that territory, it has a way of opening up. So and this obsession, of course, that you have with it. So you know, I loved this, you know, these different smells and everything. And that's just one example I'm giving you. There's many more like this. Even with painting, Taurus rules painting as well, you know, the face. And for example, I never learned painting, you know, it's for some weird reason, like even though I've been in so many different schools, and in schools, like, they teach you drawing and stuff, I somehow never had any classes related to this growing up. So but you know, suddenly a few years ago, because I developed these spiritual qualities, now I had this urge from within me to paint, you know, to paint people's higher self, like my own higher self and other people's spiritual qualities in the form of a painting. But at the same time, it's something I've never done. It's completely the unknown for me. I just had this desire to do it. So you might find like that you know, you're thrown into circumstances where it's not, you don't feel resourceful enough, you know, like it's not something that you have done before. But like, it's kind of like you know, it's very easy then to say, well, I don't know painting, I've never learned it, you know, why should I do it, and who will buy it or whatever. But it's you know, when you actually do appreciate what you have, like, just begin, like, with all the paints that you have, with the paper. You might not have training, but you have those resources. So whatever you do have, begin with that, and you know, start it, and it leads to something that actually brings you lots of opportunities. So now it's one of the main services that I offer. You know, I still don't know how to, like, professionally paint or anything, but it's something I developed on my own, and it's actually you know, at a very basic level in terms of my painting skills. But what comes through is these spiritual qualities, these rays, and you know, that people see it, they appreciate it. So yeah, so I hope that you know, one example gives you an idea of what it looks like. It's about appreciating the resources that are in front of you in the moment, even if you have just one thing, to utilize the value of that fully. And often with this position in your early part of life, you wouldn't have appreciated that. Like sometimes, like even for me, for example, you know, I had like I used to be quite messy, for example. I didn't know how to manage, the management of everything that's in my room, everything that I possess, because Taurus is about what you possess, the things that you own. And you might have lots of it. So for example, with food, I love to have lots of it, or clothes, I have lots of it, but never really learned how to regulate that, you know, that after a certain time you give away clothes and then new ones come in. It's like this recycling, you know, that happens. And this can also lead to, this is another position that can lead to like a hoarder, for example, or like I was, you know, of clothes, of material things, because again, that energy of managing material things is not grounded within them. So basically, essentially, what you're doing is learning how to be grounded with the material side of life. You might be like that with the spiritual side of life, or the energetic side of life, or just in relationships. If you don't really believe in spirituality, you might be somebody who's quite empowered with that, with being emotionally empowered. But in this life, you are asked to really appreciate, the physical side as well, the objects that you own, your own sensuality, the fact that, the stability of life as well, not just like the fact that life changes and nothing is forever, but also the fact that we are in a physical body, we have all of these senses, and we are here to enjoy it, but not in a way that we just consume. It's more about having the little that you do have, and appreciating the full essence of that, going deep within it to appreciate its full essence. Just like I was giving you the example of essential oils, that works with the essence of the flower. So you learn about the flower, and you appreciate what that means, and you go working straight with the essence and appreciating its scent and beauty, and then that opens up something within you. Then you're able to combine I was able to combine like the different oils and just experiment with that, be creative with it. And when you actually do that, go deep within working with the material aspects of life, when you appreciate its essence, whatever that is for you, those resources, and utilize it to its full ability, that's when life rewards you. That's when more abundance comes in. So your more abundance will come in when you appreciate what you already have. This is very important for this position. And actually with this position also, you can be someone who becomes very financially well off. It depends. It's not always the case, but you will, there's a sense of abundance with it. It doesn't always have to be financially well off, but there's this inflow of abundance when you actually learn to appreciate what's there. And you can become a great resource for yourself and for others as well. Now, I made some other points related to this position that I want to speak about. Let's see what I've written. So some of the negatives that can happen with this, I mentioned some of them, is that you can put in excessive, because Taurus rules the throat and the second house rules the throat area, and when we want to cling on, because when you have the North Node in this, then you really desire this energy, but also you're not very mature in it, so you might desire the lower forms of this energy when you haven't yet learned to recognize what the true essence is. So it can lead to or being over obsessive about food. You want all kinds of different foods, so you can put in your body many different foods, and or poisons as well, because anything that goes through the throat, so it can be like alcohol, different kinds of addictions can happen through that, because again, you want all of it. You want to feel, it's like sensuality is what Taurus is, and you want to feel sensual and that sensuality of being in this body, but the things that you put in, it's never enough, because you don't sit with it. You don't actually sit with that one thing that you have and appreciate its value. You just desire lots and lots. So that is one thing that can happen. And I explained how with anything that you have, like with the material things in life and your senses, you need to appreciate just being physically present with it and appreciating it to its full worth, rather than wanting to consume more and more. Then let's see what else I've written. Honoring the resources that you have and reaping their essence. Some of the remedies that I found with this position can be, and these are just my own, I haven't read this anywhere, but gardening and watching things grow can be really helpful for you, because the sign of Taurus is about stability. It's about plants and nature growing. So the Taurus is the archetype of it is somebody, for example, like a gardener, or somebody who's taking care of plants, the nurturer. And what they do is, like, there's a plant and you have to go there, and there's a process. You throw in the seeds, then it needs something, like it needs on a regular basis, it needs to be fed with water, then it needs sunlight, then it maybe needs some fertilizers or whatever it is. So there's that nurturing aspect, of showing up in the physical again and again on a consistent basis. When you feed that, that's when something grows. And that's when you do you need to do that with your resources, and with the physical things in your life, again, valuing the essence of what's there. Like, you just have a seed in the beginning, it doesn't really mean anything, but a whole tree comes out of it, you know, or a whole plant comes out of it. So nurturing what's needed, nurturing your projects as well, you know, nurturing your finances, realizing the fact that, you know, when you put in little by little every day on a consistent basis, because stability comes that way, and you need to learn that, you know, that stability, that consistency, putting into things, because that's what earth signs are about. And Scorpio, the opposite end, which is what you are good at, is all about these turbulent changes. 1 minute everything's here, the next minute it's all gone. It's not really about stability. So in this life, you know, you have to learn that consistency and stability. So when you're taking care of something, you know, like plants, for example, that's just one example, you're nurturing it, life in one form or another. It can even be in other ways that you try this, but that can kind of get you in the energy of that, and then, you know, hopefully you're able to put it in other things as well. But that is something that I found useful, you know, that can bring us into that energy and help with this North Node position to nourish and to nurture things and to value them. So the sign of Taurus and the second house also rules, you know, speech, and it rules the face. So there can be, you know, this is just something additional that I'm sharing now, that, you know, there can be some interesting facts related to this. So for example, if you know a little bit of astrology, and let's say you have the sign of you have your North Node in the sign of Taurus, but it's in a specific house, then showing your face, because Taurus rules the face, in that aspect of life can be beneficial to you, can bring opportunities. So for example, I have this position, you know, the North Node in the sign of Taurus, and it's in the 11th house. The 11th house has to do with the masses, it has to do with groups of people, you know, networking and stuff like that. It has to do with new technologies, like, you know, like I'm filming through a camera. And so when you show your face there, or when you use speech as well there, you know, that can lead to opportunities and growth, which is kind of what I do as well. And I find that each time that I put myself out there, even like in my physical life, when I go out into different networks, you know, different kinds of circles, it can be quite helpful. Then when you have this position, the North Node in Taurus or in the second house, with speech, you know, it can be because it has to do with the voice and speech, because it rules the throat. Sometimes it can lead to a talent with singing or with speaking, you know, all of these things. It can be quite unusual, because wherever we have Rahu or the North Node, it can be quite eccentric, or because there's this really high vibrational energy that is, you know, that is chaotic. So it will either, when we learn how to manage it, the higher aspect is we can really use it and be something, you know, different and eccentric. Or the lower side of it, when we allow that to happen, it can lead to something very unusual, you know, distasteful, something chaotic. In the higher sense, for example, like I said, it can give like singing talent, or with speech as well. So for example, when I was really young, I think I was only 2 or 3 years old, I was already speaking, you know, all of these words. I remember that my family is always talking about it, that, you know, I used to say like these complicated words, like these acronyms, like, you know, there's this institution in India called NIFT, the National Institute of Fashion and Technology, and a couple of other ones. And I was, you know, just like so young, you know, just a couple of years old, and I would say it very fluently, and everybody was, you know, really impressed by that, how this little kid can say it so clearly. And kind of like also, you know, the sign of Taurus rules one of the eyes. I forgot which one it is, the left or the right. But one of those eyes, you know, there was something wrong with it. Like it was like my eyeball would face the other way, and so the doctor thought that there was something wrong with it and gave me glasses. So for a while I had these glasses. And so the doctor, you know, gave me these glasses to put on, and later, like after one year or something, they found that there's actually nothing wrong with my eye. It was just like that in the beginning, like one was facing the other way or something. and it resolved on its own, you know. And now actually, you know, I'm 34 years old and I've always had perfect eyesight, so there was actually nothing wrong with my eyesight, because when I was that young, you know, they thought that there was something wrong with my eyesight, but it wasn't. So it can it's interesting, you know, because it can lead to where the North Node is placed, it can lead to these something eccentric, you know, something strange, that has no explanation sometimes, or looks very different, you know, from the normal way. And when you have the North Node in the sign of Taurus or the second house, because again it rules speech and you know, the words that we use, in the more negative sense, it can lead to somebody who has like ill speech, you know, a dirty mouth. So when you get really angry, you can surprise yourself sometimes with the words that you say. Like, it can be this power that just takes over you, and with what you blurt out, you know, like for example, I'm not really into cussing and stuff, you know, so much, but sometimes when, you know, I'm just sitting with myself and an old memory comes up and I'm really embarrassed about something, I'll just say something like, why'd you do that? Or, you know, and I'm kind of taken aback because you know, it's not something I expected. So again, there can be this eccentric behavior when it comes to the life area that the North Node represents. So these are just some things that I noticed. I don't know if they are helpful as such in, you know, in sharing them, but I just wanted to, because I thought that they were interesting observations. And with this position, it's interesting because, you know, like I said, you're developing what the North Node represents, and you don't fully know it in the beginning. So when it's in the sign of Taurus or the second house, it's, you know, money is one of those things. And so for example, you know, sometimes like you may go through, like I went through times when I didn't know how much value to put in a product. So for example, like I had things on my website and I didn't know what to price it, because again, there's this eccentric, chaotic energy and understanding of the physical value of things. So I had a hard time, you know, pinning down, like I know what I'm worth, you know, in terms of what I can provide, you know, the services that I can provide and how good I can be with them, and there's this confidence that's there with that. But what does that translate as, you know, in terms of money, in terms of something physical? Sometimes people with this position can struggle with that, like they don't have any concept, so they can either overprice something or underprice it, you know. And they can do the same with their self-worth, because again, they don't know what it looks like in the physical. So while they're still developing that, you know, sometimes they might go through periods like that where it's chaotic, one extreme or the other. And you know, learning to balance this energy overall in a way of valuing material things and working with them really helps to develop that relationship with yourself as well. So this axis is really good for that, you know. When we become mature with both sides equally, we are someone who has this energy of, you know, being sensual as well as sexual, and very magnetic with that as well to other people.